As 2024 wraps up, it's time to shine a light on the trends and people who shaped this incredible year. If there's one big story, it's how startup IPOs came into their own. A record 12 startups went public, raising billions and showing the world that India's startup ecosystem has come of age. This was also the year when venture capitalists saw their patience pay off. Years of backing and building startups delivered, with VC funds taking home over $4 billion from IPOs and public market sales. That's double what they made in 2023 and 2.5 times the returns of 2022. Big names like SoftBank, Peak 15, Accel, Elevation and Process turned bold bets into blockbuster successes on Dalal Street. Now, this IPO wave didn't happen by chance. India's market thrived despite global challenges, thanks to steady economic growth, favorable market conditions, and improvements in the regulatory framework. As per an S&P Global Market Intelligence report, while the US, China, and Europe saw muted IPO activity, India's startups stepped up. Swiggy's $1.35 billion IPO, the biggest tech listing in the world this year, was a standout moment fueled by the growing appetite for tech-driven innovation with a focus on financial sustainability and profitability. And the story doesn't end here. 2025 promises an even bigger lineup, 25 at last count, with IPOs expected from names like Zetwork, Meesho, Bluestone, Urban Company, Zepto, Grow and Pine Labs, just to name a few. 2024 has also seen the return of big deals and bets by VC funds. Zepto alone raised over $1 billion in the year. That saw over $10 billion being pumped into the system. And interestingly, family offices poured in over $1 billion into startups. Hello and welcome to this very special edition of Young Turks, India's longest-running show on startups and entrepreneurship. I'm Shireen Bhan. To reflect on the year gone by and what 2025 has in store for us, I'm joined by Mukul Arora, co-managing partner at Elevation Capital, and Anand Daniel, partner at Accel. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18. Mukul, let me start by asking you, we've just taken our viewers through a whole host of the trends that shaped 2024, IPOs being the big one. But to your mind, what would be the standout, trends, the big performers in the year gone by?
See, so if we look at this year, we have to step back and look at last 3-4 years together. So 2021 and early 22 was a period when we saw a lot of capital coming into the startup ecosystem. And then as the capital markets dried up, last 2.5 years have been years of efficiency. They have also been years which have really separated high quality companies from not so great companies. And therefore, this year we have seen a lot of questions about Indian startup ecosystem being answered in a very, very comprehensive manner. So one, we always used to hear questions on, hey, is the India market large enough or not? And we have seen a lot of categories in India have now become very large, whether it's $100 billion of Indian marketplaces, whether it is $10 billion of ad revenue, and I can go on and on. Second, we used to hear a lot of questions on, will these companies ever make money? So they make GMV, but will they ever be profitable? Again, we have seen a lot of companies become very clearly profitable and generating hundreds of millions of cash. And third were questions around exits, which you've already covered in the introduction, that we have seen finally a lot of very strong exits and very attractive reception on public markets for these companies. So I would say this has been a coming of age year for Indian startup ecosystem, where finally they have moved from being startups to established businesses and will hopefully keep compounding from here for decades ahead.
To take forward what we just heard there from Mukul, to your mind, what have been the big trends that have shaped 2024 and that will continue to drive momentum and deal activity in 2025?
Hi, Shireen. Thanks for having me and congrats on the show. So I echo all that Mukul talked about, right? So startups focusing on building in a sustainable way, and that the public markets are receiving that well. So you asked about trends that have started taking off, and like one of the areas that we've been very excited about is we've always tracked the consumer movement over a period of time, and we feel there's a lot of activity still to be seen in the Bharat side of things, which is tier 2 plus India. So as you know, we've done a lot of work around that. The other area where a lot of activity is still early days is AI. AI startups from India, for India and for the globe. That's another sector. The third being manufacturing and B2B companies that tech companies that make this more efficient. You talked about Zetwork earlier on, and Infra Market and more such companies and BlackBuck, which went public as well. So all these are going after the B2B opportunities. And these are some of the areas where we think there's a lot more to be done from an India perspective.
We've seen the kind of deal activity in the quick commerce space with the companies like Zepto, etc., raising over $1 billion just in 2024. How are you reading now the next wave as far as this sector is concerned?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the Indian consumer now is really well trained to order and expects a lot of convenience and convenience in 10 minutes as well, right? So that we have seen in the last couple of years. So the lines are really blurring. So when quick commerce started, yeah, or e-commerce started, just getting things at home and getting it in the prescribed time in a couple of days was a big deal. But now everything you want in 10 minutes, be it not like electronics, be it any category you take across various categories, people want it faster and faster. So that's a trend. It's a balancing act. How do you do that while not stocking up too many things? That's the fine line. The e-commerce is known for long tail. So you can't have long tail as well as quick delivery. So that's the balance that needs to be done.
Take me through the bets that you have made in 2024, the investment thesis that will continue to drive your checks and where they head in 2025.
The first three core pillars are consumer, which includes consumer tech platforms like Swiggy, but it also includes consumer brands, where we've been early investors in companies like Country Delight, Bliss Club, etc. Second is fintech financial services. Third is SaaS plus AI, India building for the world. And the fourth, which we have very actively started building out this year, is healthcare. So these four will continue to be big focus areas for us going into the next year as well. And if we contrast Indian market with, let's say, rest of the world, where 80-90% of venture capital today is going into AI, our view is in India, where we are as an economy, there is a lot of headroom across all of these categories. And therefore, in India, both investment and returns will be much more broad-based and secular and not really limited to AI. And second, we also believe role of AI in India will be a lot more cross-cutting. So it can play a role in education, it can play a role in healthcare, it can play a role in financial services. And therefore, there will be multiple avenues versus only SaaS and B2B software for the world, which of course will remain a focus area as well. So this year, like you mentioned, we ended up investing in 30 companies, pretty much equally split between the first three and a little bit in healthcare. And my view is next year will be very similar for us as well.
What's the thesis as far as AI is concerned, and how will that drive your investment?
So I think from an India perspective, we feel there's an opportunity for a lot of middleware companies. For example, we invest in a company called Simply Smart, which optimizes the inference engine for AI. And so these are two young entrepreneurs from India, but building a world-class product sitting out of here, right? So we expect to see more of that coming out of the middle layer. And then on the applications across both consumer side as well as the enterprise side, it could be platforms, agentic platforms like Emma that we invested in that go and solves for various use cases. We see there will be opportunities like that. And then finally, what we call services as software. Because if you look at India, it has a very deep services industry, and it's been built over the last 20, 30 years. And there's a lot of talent there. Can you combine AI with that talent and provide amazing service, right? So that's why we're calling that service as a software. And that's an area where we feel there's a lot of opportunities as well. So these are some of the areas within AI we feel we'd love to invest in.
Where are we in that cycle at this point in time, given all the hype surrounding AI?
Yeah, you're talking about the layers below, right? So there is a lot of activity still at the LLM level, and then everyone there are large players like OpenAI and like Anthropic and more, and then there's Amazon that has also launched a bunch of things. So there's a lot of activity at the infrastructure layer. So it's tough to go and compete at that layer, being a startup, right? So whereas, can you build on top of that? Can you make those layers a lot more efficient and be the bridge between those various layers, and you can make it even agnostic to those different platforms and make it more user-friendly for the people building the apps. So that's what I call as the middle layer. And there, I think we have 15 million plus developers. It has one of the largest markets for developers, and who are all hungry to learn AI and build stuff around AI. So I think there is a lot of opportunity there. And there's a lot of product thinking also that's happening at that level. People who are working in various startups, learning what are the problem sets while building for AI, and they're coming out and doing some of this as well.
Mukul, just build on that, the way that you're addressing AI and the middle layer, so to speak, if at all, in India.
Sure, sure. So, Shireen, let me add a couple of points to what Anand said. See, one unique advantage we have in India is that some of the tech companies in India are probably largest in the world in terms of number of users and complexity they are handling. Swiggy would be a good example of that. Meesho would be a good example of that. They have hundreds of millions of annual transacting customers. So it's bigger than even some of the US companies. And therefore, the kind of complexity that Indian developers, Indian engineers are handling is almost the best in class. And therefore, that's what is critical in this middle layer, where if you are building software which is managing security, which is managing stability, which is managing this complexity at middleware for these companies at scale, you can do it for rest of the world as well. So as we are getting into this AI era, the same will continue to happen from India. That is one. Second, we also feel if we draw a parallel to SaaS era over the last 15, 20 years, we were probably late to the game. SaaS companies in US started in late 90s, early 2000s, whereas Freshworks started in 2010, 2011. So we were almost a decade late. And we also did not have role models on how to sell software from India for the world at that time. But over the last 15 years, we have had those learnings, we have those role models, we have best-in-class talent as we spoke about. So as we also enter the AI application layer era, India will be much better prepared. And our view is we will see many more companies like a Freshworks, like a BrowserStack coming from India and building for the world and capturing meaningful share of that market. So we are very, very excited both about this middleware, which we spoke about, and also about the application layer AI companies getting built from India.
Anything in specific? Any companies that you're going to be watching out for, Mukul, whether they're part of your portfolio outside of it?
Sure. Actually, let me share a couple of examples with you. So one of the companies we had invested in their previous round, and coincidentally, Axel invested in that company this year. They are called NanoNets. And they are an AI first company. What they do is, before NanoNets, in a pre-AI era, document processing companies used to work on structured documents. Thanks to AI, NanoNets type technology can now work on unstructured documents. And then they are saying that if you are a company which has a lot of documents, which could be invoices, which could be purchase orders, etc., we'll not only help process them automatically, even if they look very different, but also we'll integrate into your workflow so that the entire workflow gets automated, right from, let's say, a company placing an order to the payment, the entire flow gets automated. So these are the kind of things which are becoming possible, which would have had tens of or hundreds of humans in a developing country manually going through those documents. So this is the kind of innovation we are seeing in the AI application layer now.